Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow by Yuval Noah Harari. Picture this for a moment. Throughout all of human history, from those first flickering campfires on the African savanna to the towering palaces of ancient Egypt, our ancestors lived under the constant threat of three relentless enemies. Three brutal forces that shaped every culture, every religion, every single life that came before ours. Famine, plague, war. For thousands upon thousands of years, these weren't just problems to solve, they were the backdrop of existence itself. Generation after generation prayed to every god they could name, begging for mercy, yet millions kept dying from hunger, from disease, from violence. It felt like an iron law of the universe that could never be broken. But now, open your eyes. Welcome to the 21st century. You and I are living in the most peaceful, prosperous era humanity has ever known. Here's something wild. For the first time in history, more people die from eating too much than from eating too little. More people die peacefully of old age than from deadly infections. And here's the real kicker. More people take their own lives than are killed by soldiers, terrorists, and criminals combined. Think about that. Sugar has actually become more dangerous than gunpowder. This isn't some utopian fantasy. This is our actual reality. Against all odds, we've done something our ancestors would consider miraculous. We've basically tamed those ancient tyrants. So here's the trillion-dollar question. If the old problems are mostly solved, what on earth do we do next? When humanity no longer has to fight tooth and nail just to survive, what does it start fighting for? This is the mind-bending question at the heart of Homo Deus, the jaw-dropping follow-up to Sapiens by the brilliant historian Yuval Noah Harari. This isn't just another book sitting on your shelf. It's essentially a mirror held up to a future that's already starting to take shape. It's sold millions of copies and been devoured by world leaders, tech titans, and deep thinkers everywhere, because it has the audacity to map out what comes next in the human story. Harari isn't your typical historian droning on about dates and dead people. He's a masterful storyteller who weaves together the distant past and the immediate future in ways that'll make your brain hurt in the best possible way. He sees the grand patterns most of us miss, and in this book he shows us exactly where those patterns are taking us. So today, we're diving headfirst into his vision. I want to walk you through what Harari calls the new human agenda. The incredible, sometimes terrifying goals humanity is setting for itself right now. By the time we're done here, you'll understand the three great quests that will define this century: our pursuit of immortality, happiness, and, yes, you heard that right, divinity. And maybe most importantly, you'll understand how our ambitious attempts to become gods might ironically be the very thing that makes us completely irrelevant. This is the story of where we're headed. Let's jump in. So where does this wild ride begin? Right here, right now. With the almost unbelievable fact that we've managed to get a handle on famine, plague, and war. Now, Harari is crystal clear about this. He's not claiming these problems have completely vanished. Obviously, there are still hungry people. Terrible diseases still exist, and yes, wars still happen. But here's what's changed. They're no longer these incomprehensible, unstoppable forces of nature. They've transformed into manageable challenges. When famine strikes today, we don't just throw our hands up and mutter, "Well, that's God's will." We're furious. We assume somebody somewhere royally screwed up. We launch investigations and promise to do better. And here's the thing, we usually do. In the past, a drought in one region meant certain starvation. Today, it's basically a business opportunity for global food distribution. We can ship grain across the planet faster than your Amazon Prime delivery. And disease? Don't even get me started. The Black Death obliterated over a quarter of Eurasia. When smallpox hitched a ride to the Americas, it wiped out up to 90% of indigenous populations. These were invisible armies of death, and for centuries, we were completely defenseless. But the 20th century changed everything. Vaccines, antibiotics, and basic understanding of hygiene transformed the game. Global child mortality has plummeted to all-time lows. We even kicked smallpox completely off the planet. When something like AIDS or Ebola shows up, we don't see divine punishment anymore. We see a solvable technical problem. Even war is becoming increasingly rare. For most of history, peace just meant that brief period before the next war. But when we say France and Germany are at peace today, we mean that war between them is literally unthinkable. Nuclear weapons made superpower conflicts an act of planetary suicide. And perhaps even more significantly, the nature of wealth itself has changed. Wealth used to be physical stuff. Gold mines, wheat fields, oil reserves. You could steal those through conquest. Today, wealth flows from knowledge. Good luck invading Silicon Valley and making off with the source code. This is our new normal. We're standing on top of a mountain of achievements our ancestors couldn't even dream about. And from up here, with the old enemies mostly defeated, humanity is scanning the horizon for new challenges. So what's on the menu for humanity's next act? Harari argues there are three big ones: immortality, happiness, and divinity. Let's tackle the first one, and probably the most audacious: our quest to kick death's butt once and for all. Throughout all of history, death belonged to the priests and philosophers. They told us death was inevitable, unchangeable, and somehow gave our lives meaning. But modern science, it sees things completely differently. To modern science, death isn't some deep metaphysical mystery. It's basically a technical glitch. You don't die because some cosmic force decreed it. You die because something broke. Your heart stopped pumping because oxygen couldn't reach the muscle cells. Cancer spread because of a random genetic typo. A virus colonized your lungs because someone sneezed on the subway. These are all technical malfunctions. And every technical problem has a technical solution. We don't need to sit around waiting for the afterlife to beat death. A couple of brilliant people in a lab somewhere can crack this puzzle. If your heart stops, we can jump-start it with electricity, or swap in a new one. If you develop cancer, we can nuke those cells with chemo, or, eventually, deploy microscopic robots to hunt them down. This isn't pie-in-the-sky dreaming. In Silicon Valley, this mission is already well underway. Google launched Calico with the openly stated goal to, quote, solve death. Tech billionaires like Peter Thiel have publicly declared their intention to live forever. He's famous for saying there are three ways to deal with death: accept it, deny it, or fight it. He chose option 3. Now, this doesn't mean we'll become truly immortal, like some unkillable deity. It means we could become what Harari calls immortal. Basically, as long as nothing catastrophically violent happens to you, no bombs, no trucks, your life won't have an expiration date stamped on it. You could theoretically live indefinitely. Futurists like Ray Kurzweil predict that by 2050, anyone with a healthy body and a fat bank account will have a legitimate shot at this. Every decade or so, you'd pop into the clinic for a tune-up, curing diseases, regenerating worn-out tissues, upgrading your hands, eyes, brain, whatever needs work. Even if we don't pull this off in our lifetimes, Harari insists the war on death will be the flagship project of this century. Our modern culture treats human life as sacred. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights says, "The right to life is our most fundamental value." Notice it doesn't say the right to life until you hit 90. By that logic, death is actually violating a basic human right. Death is essentially a crime against humanity, and we're morally obligated to fight it with everything we've got. Which brings us to the second massive project on humanity's new to-do list, cracking the code on happiness. After all, who wants to live forever if you're miserable the whole time? For centuries, philosophers like Epicurus insisted that happiness was life's entire point. But today, this isn't just a personal quest anymore. It's a collective mission. The British philosopher Jeremy Bentham famously declared that the highest good is, quote, "the greatest happiness of the greatest number." He believed governments, markets, and the entire scientific community should focus on one thing: boosting global happiness. For a long time, governments didn't really prioritize this. They measured success in land-controlled, population size, and GDP, not whether people were actually happy. But that's shifting. There's now a serious movement to replace GDP with something called GDH, gross domestic happiness. After all, what do people actually want? They don't want to just produce widgets and pay taxes. They want to feel good. And here's where we hit a massive wall. Despite our unprecedented wealth, comfort, and security, it's not remotely clear we're any happier than our ancestors grinding it out in medieval villages. In fact, suicide rates in wealthy, developed countries are way higher than in traditional societies. Why? Harari explains that happiness has this mysterious glass ceiling held up by two stubborn pillars, one psychological, the other biological. The psychological pillar is all about expectations. Here's the thing. Our happiness doesn't actually depend on objective reality. It depends on how reality matches up with our expectations. The problem? As conditions improve, our expectations inflate like crazy. You get that shiny new smartphone and you're ecstatic. 3 months later, it's just normal. And now you're already daydreaming about the next model. Our achievements give us a quick happiness hit, but it fades fast, leaving us hungry for more. The biological pillar is even tougher to crack. According to life sciences, our happiness and suffering are basically just the balance of sensations in our body, controlled entirely by our biochemistry. We never actually react to external events, like scoring that promotion or winning a game. We only react to the sensations firing through our own nervous system. Winning the World Cup doesn't make you happy. What makes you happy is the rush of pleasant sensations, those chills, those waves of electricity washing through your body. That's what we label happiness. But here's the catch. Evolution didn't design us for constant bliss. It designed us to survive and make babies. Our biochemical system rewards survival-enhancing behaviors, like eating and mating, with pleasant sensations. But these feelings are temporary. They're basically marketing tricks to keep us hustling. A squirrel that ate one nut and felt permanently blissful wouldn't bother searching for more nuts or mates. Its lazy, blissed-out genes would die out. Our genes come from ancestors who got a quick pleasure hit and immediately went back to grinding. So if happiness is controlled by biochemistry, and that biochemistry is optimized for survival rather than lasting contentment, what's the solution? The only way to achieve permanent happiness, Harari argues, is to re-engineer our biochemical system itself. And guess what? We've already started. We're popping psychiatric drugs not just to treat severe mental illness, but to handle ordinary sadness. We're giving stimulants like Ritalin to millions of perfectly healthy kids just to help them focus and meet rising expectations. We're actively trying to hack happiness by manipulating brain chemistry. This leads us to the third and most profound item on humanity's new agenda: upgrading ourselves into gods, achieving divinity. This might sound like something out of a sci-fi movie, but Harari defines it in surprisingly practical terms. When he talks about becoming gods, he's thinking more Greek mythology than the Bible. Zeus and his crew had flaws and limits, sure, but they could operate on a totally different scale than mortals. They designed and created living beings, morphed their own bodies, controlled the environment, read minds, and, they escaped death. Humans are now actively working on acquiring all these abilities. The quest for immortality and happiness will inevitably force us to gain godlike control over our own biology. If we develop the power to engineer death and suffering out of our system, that same power will let us redesign our bodies and minds however we want. Harari lays out 3 paths to this upgrade. First, biological engineering. This means deliberately rewriting our genetic code, rewiring brain circuits, and tweaking our biochemical balance. We're taking the old Homo sapiens body and transforming it into something entirely new. Second, cyborg engineering. This is about fusing our organic bodies with inorganic tech, bionic limbs, artificial eyes, or millions of microscopic robots cruising through our bloodstream fixing problems in real time. A cyborg could exist in multiple places simultaneously. Imagine a doctor in Stockholm performing surgery in Tokyo, and on a Mars space station at the same time. Third, engineering non-organic beings. This is the most radical path. It skips organic parts altogether. We're talking about creating completely artificial life, intelligent software that can navigate virtual and physical worlds, totally free from the limitations of our messy organic chemistry. Once we seriously head down these paths, Harari says, Homo sapiens as we know it will vanish. A completely new chapter of history will open up, one we can't even begin to imagine. But before we get there, we need to understand the philosophical engine that's been driving all of this. What made us believe we even have the right to chase such ambitious goals? The answer lies in a deal we've been making with ourselves for the last 300 years. Harari calls it the modern covenant. The deal is beautifully simple. Humans agree to give up meaning in exchange for power. For most of history, we believed we were characters in a grand cosmic drama, written by gods or governed by natural laws. This script gave our lives meaning, but it also severely limited our power. Hamlet can't just bail on Denmark to join an ashram. Shakespeare won't allow it. Similarly, we couldn't live forever or escape disease because it simply wasn't in the script. But here's the flip side. If there's no predetermined script, we're not locked into any specific role. We can do whatever we want if we figure out how. Plagues, droughts, wars. They don't have cosmic significance, so we can eliminate them. There's no paradise waiting after death, but hey, we can try building one right here on Earth. This is the great modern deal. Nearly unlimited power is within our grasp, but beneath us yawns this terrifying abyss of meaninglessness. So how did we handle this? Humans can't actually function in a world without meaning. So we found a clever workaround. We invented a new religion to fill the void, one that didn't look up to the heavens but looked inward at ourselves. This religion is called humanism. Humanism essentially worships humanity, It says the ultimate source of all meaning and authority isn't God or ancient scriptures. It's human experience, our feelings, our desires, our choices. This was an absolutely massive revolution. Back in medieval times, if a woman had an affair, she'd confess to a priest. The priest would crack open the Holy Scriptures, consult God's Word, and tell her she'd committed a grievous sin. How she felt about it was completely irrelevant. Today, that same woman might see a therapist. The therapist won't pull out a holy book. Instead, they'll ask, "Well, how do you feel about it?" The ultimate authority has shifted from an external deity to our own internal experience. This single idea has transformed literally every aspect of modern life. In politics, we call it democracy. We believe voters know best. We don't ask priests or kings who should lead. We poll the feelings of millions of individuals. In economics, it's the free market. The customer is always right. A product's value isn't determined by some objective standard. It's whatever customers are willing to pay based on their desires. In art, we say beauty is in the eye of the beholder. There's no objective standard anymore. A urinal can be considered a masterpiece if enough people feel it is. In ethics, the motto becomes, if it feels good, do it. An action is only considered wrong if it causes someone to feel bad. And in education, we teach kids to think for yourself. The goal isn't memorizing what Aristotle or the Bible said. It's getting in touch with your own inner voice. For 300 years, this humanist philosophy has dominated the world. It powered our pursuit of ever greater capabilities, insisting that what we feel, what we desire, what we experience, that's the most important thing in the universe. This belief fuels our quest for immortality and endless happiness. We believe our experiences are so precious, they absolutely must not end. But here's the massive, terrifying irony that Harari reveals. The very science that humanism championed is now undermining its own foundations. The 21st century is witnessing a head-on collision between core humanist beliefs and the latest discoveries in life sciences. And humanism is losing badly. Humanism rests on three fundamental pillars. First, the idea that each of us is an individual, a single, indivisible self, that deep inside there's one authentic voice, your true self. Second, that this true self is completely free, that you possess genuine free will. Third, that because of this, only you can truly know yourself. Nobody outside can really understand your feelings or predict your choices. Science is now taking a sledgehammer to all three pillars. Let's start with free will. For centuries, we believed our choices were authentically ours. But science is revealing something different. Our decisions are products of electrochemical processes in the brain, shaped by our genes and environment. These processes are either deterministic or random, but they're never actually free. Scientists can now use brain scanners to predict your decisions before you're even consciously aware of them. In experiments, people are told to press a button with either their right or left hand whenever they feel like it. Scientists monitoring their brains can see the decision forming several seconds before the person consciously feels they've made a choice. That desire to press the button wasn't really a choice. It was a biochemical event. You don't choose your desires. You only feel them and then act on them. This isn't just philosophical hair-splitting. It has real-world implications. If we lack free will, then our desires can be manipulated and controlled. Take the robo-rat experiment. Scientists implant electrodes in a rat's brain and use a remote control to make it turn left, turn right, climb ladders, even jump from heights it would normally fear. The rat doesn't feel controlled at all. When the scientist presses turn left, The rat genuinely wants to turn left. Its desire is just a pattern of neurons firing. It doesn't matter whether those neurons are stimulated by other neurons or by an electrode. We can do this to humans too. Transcranial helmets can send electromagnetic pulses into your brain to boost focus, reduce anxiety, or even alter your desires. The supposedly sacred human will is becoming just another product that can be engineered and tweaked. Next, science is demolishing the idea of a single, unified self. Life sciences have discovered we're not individuals, we're actually dividuals. We're basically a collection of competing voices and conflicting algorithms all crammed into one skull. Harari explains this brilliantly through the work of Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman, who distinguished between two different selves living inside each of us, the experiencing self and the narrating self. The experiencing self is your moment-to-moment consciousness. It's the part of you that feels the sting of an injection or the boredom of a 3-hour meeting. The narrating self is the storyteller in your head. It takes the messy chaos of your experiences, cherry-picks a few peak moments and the ending, then weaves them into a neat, coherent story. And here's the kicker. It's the narrating self that makes all your major life decisions. There's a famous experiment that demonstrates this perfectly. People were asked to stick their hand in painfully cold water for 60 seconds. Brutal. In a second trial, they dipped their other hand in the same freezing water for 60 seconds, but then kept it submerged for an additional 30 seconds, while the water was warmed up slightly. Objectively, the second trial was worse. It contained all the pain of the first plus 30 extra seconds of discomfort. But when asked which experience they'd rather repeat, the vast majority chose the longer, objectively worse second one. Why on earth would they do that? Because the narrating self doesn't care about duration. It just averages the peak moment of pain with the final moment. In the second trial, the ending was slightly less awful, so the narrating self spun a better story. We identify with our narrating self. We think that story is the real us, but it's essentially fiction. It ignores huge chunks of actual experience and frequently gets things completely wrong. So when humanism tells us to listen to yourself, which self exactly are we supposed to listen to? The one that actually feels everything, or the one that tells convenient stories afterward? This brings us to the final, most dramatic twist in our story, what Harari calls the Great Decoupling, and the rise of a completely new worldview. Throughout all of history, high intelligence has been paired with consciousness. Only conscious beings could play chess, drive vehicles, or diagnose diseases. But that coupling is breaking apart right now. We're creating non-conscious algorithms that can perform these tasks better than any human being. This is the Great Decoupling. Intelligence is breaking free from consciousness. A self-driving car can navigate busy city streets with superhuman precision, but it feels absolutely nothing. It has intelligence but zero consciousness. Same goes for an AI that diagnoses cancer more accurately than experienced oncologists, or algorithms that trade stocks faster and better than any human on Wall Street. And here's the crucial question facing the 21st century: which matters more, intelligence or consciousness? For militaries and corporations, the answer is brutally simple. Intelligence is mandatory. Consciousness is optional. The system doesn't need a taxi driver to appreciate music or ponder the meaning of existence. It just needs someone to get passengers from point A to point B. And an algorithm does that better. The system doesn't need doctors to feel empathy for patients. It just needs them to make correct diagnoses. AI does that better too. As algorithms push humans out of the job market, we might witness the emergence of a massive new, useless class, billions of people who have zero economic or military value. What will they do all day? Maybe they'll spend their time immersed in hyper-realistic virtual worlds, funded by universal basic income. But in such a world, what's the actual value of human experience? What's so special about someone whose only contribution is generating data while playing video games? This is where Harari introduces the next big belief system, one already emerging from Silicon Valley. It's not a throwback to old religions. It's a brand new techno-religion called Dataism. Dataism says the universe is essentially one giant data processing system. The value of any entity, whether it's a human, an elephant, or a symphony, is determined by its contribution to processing data. From this perspective, Homo sapiens is just an algorithm, a remarkably sophisticated biochemical algorithm, sure, but still just an algorithm for processing data. And if we create an electronic algorithm that processes data more efficiently, then that algorithm becomes superior to us in the same way we're superior to chickens. Dataism has a new supreme value: information flow. Its first commandment is to maximize data flow by connecting to more devices and producing more information. The second commandment is to connect everything to the system, including people who'd rather not be connected. The greatest sin? Blocking data flow. And death is simply the cessation of information processing. This religion tells us our experiences are basically meaningless if they're not shared. That beautiful sunset you witnessed has no value unless you photograph it, post it on Instagram, and feed it into the data stream. The new motto is, if you experience something, record it. If you record something, upload it. If you upload something, share it. Dataism offers a chilling response to humanism's quest for meaning. Humanism said we must find meaning within ourselves. Dataism says we can't possibly do that. Instead, we should record our experiences, upload them to the great data flow, and let the algorithms discover their meaning for us. And this is already happening in real time. We trust Amazon's algorithm to pick our books, Netflix's to choose our shows, and Waze to tell us which route to take. Soon, we'll trust algorithms to tell us who to marry. Hey Google, you'll say, I really like both Sarah and Emma. I'm totally confused. What should I do? And Google will respond, I've known you since birth. I've read every email and recorded every phone call. I have your complete DNA profile and biometric data from every date you've ever been on. Based on comprehensive analysis, I recommend Sarah. With an 87% probability, you'll be more satisfied long term. When we reach that point, authority shifts completely from humans to algorithms. The humanist revolution will be finished. We'll move from a human-centered world to a data-centered world. This leaves us staring at three enormous questions that will define our future. First, are organisms really just algorithms, and is life really just data processing? Second, what's actually more valuable, intelligence or consciousness? Third, what happens to our society, politics, and daily lives when non-conscious but hyper-intelligent algorithms understand us better than we understand ourselves? This is the edge we're standing on right now. We are potentially the last generation of Homo sapiens. In the coming century, we'll either upgrade ourselves into something approaching divinity, or we'll fade into irrelevance. When you finish absorbing a book like Homo Deus, it's natural to feel somewhat unsettled, maybe even a little scared. The future Harari sketches out is so radically different from anything we know, and it fundamentally challenges our deepest beliefs about what it means to be human. But here's what I think is the real power of this book. It's not actually about predicting the future. It's about clarifying the present with brutal honesty. The forces he describes, biotechnology, artificial intelligence, algorithmic decision-making, these aren't distant science fiction concepts. They're here, right now, quietly reshaping our lives, in ways we're only beginning to grasp. Every time you let Netflix choose your next binge, or Spotify curate your soundtrack, you're handing over a small piece of your decision-making authority to an algorithm. You're essentially trusting it to know your preferences better than you know them yourself. Harari's genius lies in taking these small, everyday surrenders and projecting them forward, showing us the logical endpoint of the path we're already walking. He forces us to confront massive questions that our technology is raising far faster than our political and social systems can handle. What strikes me most powerfully is his argument that our liberal humanist values, the very principles that brought us so much progress and relative peace, rest on foundations that science is now revealing to be myths. The concept of the free individual, with a unified, authentic self, has been civilization's bedrock for centuries. But if that individual is actually a messy collection of competing biochemical algorithms, and if free will is essentially an illusion created by our narrating self, then what happens to democracy? What happens to human rights? What happens to our belief that human experience is sacred? We honestly don't have solid answers yet. But Harari's work serves as a crucial wake-up call. It tells us we cannot afford to be passive spectators during this technological revolution. We need to actively engage with these questions and consciously decide what kind of future we want to create. So, what can you actually do right now after hearing all this? I think the first step is simple but profound. Start paying attention. Really notice how algorithms are already influencing your choices. When your phone surfaces a particular news article, ask yourself why that one. When you feel a powerful urge to buy something you saw online, pause and wonder where that desire actually originated. Was it your authentic self making that choice, or was it a carefully crafted algorithm that knows exactly which emotional buttons to push? The second step is to spark conversations. Talk about these ideas with friends, family, colleagues, anyone who'll listen. The future of humanity shouldn't be decided exclusively by a handful of engineers and tech billionaires in Silicon Valley boardrooms. This needs to be a conversation involving all of us. We need to collectively decide what we truly value. Is it raw intelligence, or is it consciousness? Is it the cold efficiency of systems, or the messy subjective quality of individual human experiences? This book isn't a prophecy to passively accept as inevitable. It's both a warning and an invitation to think more deeply about who we are, where we're heading, and what we actually want to become. That was an exploration of Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow by Yuval Noah Harari. We've covered the grand sweep of his argument today, but I'll be straight with you. A summary can only take you so far. The real magic happens when you read the book yourself, when you're alone with it. It's in those quiet moments when a particular story or simple phrase hits you in an unexpected way that changes how you see everything. This summary is designed to help you decide whether this book deserves your time. If anything we've discussed today has resonated with you, sparked your curiosity, or challenged your assumptions, I strongly encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about acquiring information. It's a genuine experience that can transform how you see yourself, your world, and your future. You'll find the link in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable, and it gave you something meaningful to think about, please show your support by hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next journey into another transformative book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's keep learning and growing together.